Well, a warm welcome to today's session of Jesus is Just All Right. This is the third in a four-part series, and we've been saying that for over 50 years, pop musicians of all genres have explored the meaning and significance of Jesus in their music. And the result is a rich collection of songs that we're trying to dip into and explore that consider important spiritual questions like faith, doubt, and prayer. And prayer is our focus for today's session. As many of you will know, this is part of the Heart Edge Living God's Future Now series, our online festival, ongoing festival of theology, ideas, and practice. And Heart Edge is an international ecumenical movement for renewal within the broad church. We do encourage you to join us if you've not already done so, and Ben has dropped the link that you can use for doing that into the chat. There'll also be more information later in the session in the chat about other Living God's Future Now events that are coming up in the near future. We're very pleased to have with us once again Delvin Case, who is a composer, musician, academic, many strings to his bow. And Delvin's been leading us through the sessions and is going to do the same for us today as we focus on pop music and prayer. So Delvin, welcome once again. Great to have you back with us. And we'll hand over to you to lead us through this session.
Thank you, Jonathan, and thank you, Ben, who's going to be helping out from Heart Edge and St. Martin's. Good to see folks. Nice to see some of you back. Nice to see some new faces. Thanks for joining me here. So I put in the chat a couple of links, and so I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to just show you what those are, and then what we will be working with today. This is a website that I made that's based upon this 10-year research project into secular songs about Jesus. And there's an academic article and a number of articles in Christian magazines, and hopefully a book coming out, on its way. I gotta write it first, but but why I bring this up is that you can, if you're interested in this in this phenomenon of secular musicians, usually non-Christians, exploring the character or attributes or personality or meaning of Jesus in their music, this website is the place to go. It describes the project and sort of describes the idea, just how sort of utterly weird it is for this phenomenon to occur. Because really, it's only been since the later 1960s that pop musicians have written songs about Jesus. Really, before then, pretty much all the music about Jesus ever written was for the church or for Christians. Now, some of these secular pop songs might be for Christians, but they're principally not, and they're oftentimes not by Christians. So this website sort of describes this, what I find to be interesting about this. But what you might be interested in particularly in is a taxonomy of the way Jesus has shown up in these songs. And it's a multi-part taxonomy that you can read about, but it has a description of songs that treat Jesus as a person, songs that treat Jesus as a paragon or an example, and songs that treat Jesus as a presence. And of course, as you know, if it's anything having to do with Christianity, it has to have three things, and they have to be in alliteration. So I'm extremely proud, even though I'm not a pastor, to have person, paragon, and presence. Work really hard for that. There are Spotify links, and then there are subcategories of Jesus about this Jesus, this category they call presence, and that's songs that treat Jesus as a savior, a heavenly savior, songs that treat him as a judge, songs that treat him as a source of truth, though a lot of these songs reject him as a source of truth, but not all, which is interesting. And then songs which treat Jesus as or view him as a worldly savior, someone who can give you something right here and right now. And that's some of the songs we're going to talk about today. What you might be interested also in is at the very bottom of this website, there is a searchable database. And so if you click on this, you can actually search, for example, for songs in which are outside of this taxonomy. Basically, you can search for prayer songs. So you go search by technique, and you can click on this and then hit search. And then what you have is all these songs that are prayers. And you'll see they are by country, folk, metal, songwriters, hip hop artists. It gives you the year. Does it not give you the year? Gotta fix that. Et cetera, et cetera. So you can actually then search for these on sort of on your own and listen to them. So there are many, well, there's maybe 15 or 20 prayer songs I've sort of discovered. We're going to look at a few, but if you're interested in these very oftentimes unorthodox yet powerful prayer songs, you can actually access this by searching that database. You can also read about the project, and there's a podcast episode, etc., on the website. But for today, we're going to focus on prayers, these prayer songs. And so the sort of the description here is that, pop songs are actually full of prayers. Now, by the way, there are lots of more pop songs that have prayers in them. I am focusing on songs that are specifically about Jesus. So these prayers are to Jesus, which I think is an interesting way to look at things. It also sort of guarantees that there is a Christian angle to this. And why that matters to me is that God can mean anything to anybody. But when you name check Jesus in a song, suddenly we get to bring the Christian tradition into the conversation. So pop songs are full of prayers, but rather than relying on familiar words, musicians lift their voices to Jesus in ways that are often highly personal and heartbreakingly honest. This session explores what we can learn about prayer and faith from the pleas and tears of a wide variety of artists. What do they pray for? Why and how? And for me, the interesting question is this one: how do we see ourselves in these songs? And how might it affect the way we think about prayer or even pray? So as I've done in past weeks, I pose a couple of questions that just to keep in mind as we listen. And then when we break into our smaller groups, and these ones are pretty simple. When we hear these songs, the question to maybe think about is, have you ever prayed like this? Have you ever prayed in the way that the artist is praying? Why? Right? Under what circumstances? Why have you felt moved? Now, it may seem like a simple question, but some of these prayers are quite unorthodox. And recognizing that we sometimes approach God in the same way is intriguing. The other question, which I think is even more interesting, is if you have not prayed, for example, like the song we're going to listen to, Jesus or a Gun, right? Have you ever wanted to pray like this, but felt you could not? If so, what was it that kept you from doing so? And why this is interesting to me is that since these are songs that are by secular artists, the artists are not beholden to the church, to a community that is going to apply some orthodoxy test, is going to judge them. A lot of these artists don't believe in God, but still write a song in which they're imagining prayer, they're trying to pray. And what I have found is these songs can be extraordinarily powerful examples of what real, honest, fearless prayer can be. And our Christian tradition is full of wonderful prayers, but I think you'll agree that some of these prayers that we hear in these songs are prayers that we sometimes wish we could pray, but don't. And I think that's really interesting about why we don't. And what does that tell us about who we think God is and what prayer is? The first question is, have you prayed like this? Why or why not? The second is, what can you learn about prayer, right? How do these kinds of songs and these kinds of prayers make us sort of think about what prayer is? So it's a little broader. So we're going to start with probably the most famous Jesus song that's out there, the song that everyone raises whenever I say, I'm studying pop songs about Jesus. And of course, that is Jesus Take the Wheel by Carrie Underwood, which I'm sure is a song you know. Either that or Jesus Walks by Kanye West. So this is a really, really good song, okay? In the sense that, as you'll see, it's a pop song by a country artist, and a lot of great country songs are about both the here and now as well as the beyond. And that's what happens here, where this is a prayer about a woman who's about to get in a car crash. So she says, Jesus, grab the wheel and save my life. But you'll see it then moves on to the fact that essentially it's a prayer of Jesus, take the wheel of my life. So it immediately connects the whole foxhole prayer, right? Because it's not, maybe we just pray to God when we really need God, but we also really need God all the time, in my perspective. So what we'll do is we're going to listen to this song. And then right after, we're going to listen to another song that's also similar in its theme. And the theme is Help Me. So the first song is Jesus Take the Wheel by Carrie Underwood. And the second song is Hey Jesus by the Indigo Girls. folk singer-songwriters. Emily Salier is one of the singers. Actually, her father is a well-known theologian, teaches at Emory University in Atlanta, interestingly. So it's not surprising to see a lot of Jesus songs in their opus. So again, 2 different songs asking for help. So without further ado, let's listen to it. So 2 really powerful, faithful songs coming from different places. And I think made particularly powerful in that latter song, the question at the end, now I ain't got nobody. She's lost her partner, her girlfriend, but you can extend that certainly to, I don't know, my life is worth, like, I found someone who loves me for who I am, and now I don't have her, and I live in a society that ignores me. So there's really, for me, there's wherever you stand on any of those issues, these are 2 very different prayers of faith that come with a backstory, and that backstory is related to what society tells you about morality and value and sin. So lots to talk about. We're going to break into groups. Why don't we plan to return, Ben, if you don't mind, at let's say at like 4 past the hour. Yes, nice to see you all again. I hope you enjoyed talking about those songs. I think we could spend the whole time talking about both of those, but these are both songs that sort of are basically asking God for help, or Jesus specifically for help. But they do so in different ways. The second song certainly raises some questions about doubt, though I think the interesting thing for me is that even though at the end of the second song, she says she's not going to call on you anymore because you didn't prove you were there. You didn't save me from the black ice, or you didn't bring my baby back to me. She still wrote this song. She still wrote a song about this process. It doesn't make her maybe look so good, if you will, but she's not trying to win the piety award of the year at her church. Like, we all want to win that. We do. I know we do, but she doesn't, right? And she writes this song that really makes it clear that probably she's not going to pray to God again, except that she wrote the whole song. So anyway, so the next couple of songs are similar. They're actually quite similar in a way, but the point here is save me. Now, of course, Jesus Take the Wheel is a song about saving you, but I think these songs you'll see they take a very different perspective. They're actually about saving one they really drill down into the idea of saving one from death or violence specifically. The first is by really an extraordinary rapper named Denzel Curry. This is a recent song called Speedboat. The video is pretty cool. We're not going to watch the video, but it's here. And this is a song about, well, it's pretty extraordinary because the hook, the chorus, is an actual prayer, straight up prayer. Jesus, please deliver us from evil. Please pray over my people. Right? Which we see. And then what you see in Life's Illegal, I don't want to use my Desert Eagle. And a Desert Eagle is a kind of assault rifle. So this, just because we don't have a lot of time, this starts as a psalm, right? My people. His people are African Americans living in the ghetto. He says, what you see in Life's Illegal, right? He's referring to whether it's racism or, redlining or whatever. But also, he's also praying, I don't want to use force, right? I have an assault weapon. I don't want to contribute to the cycle of violence, which is so powerful in this. And it's it's anti-psalmic. It's not saying, God, I know you will overthrow the Mennonites, right? Or not the Mennonites, sorry, Midianites, sorry, any Mennonites out there. Sorry, Midianites or whatever it is, right? It's actually, force is not going to be the answer, which is really interesting coming from a rapper. And by the way, this is a rapper whose brother died a couple of years earlier. His teenage brother died from a gunshot violence in I believe Miami. So he's coming from a place of knowing what violence and death does as a response. The second is also pretty dark. It's called Jesus or a Gun by the alternative metal band Fuel. And this is the dark night of the soul. I mean, here it is. Everything's trying to drag me down. I'll rip the sky from the ground. Tell me, who's my saving one? Jesus or a gun, right? How do I get out? What's the way out? So let's listen to these. They're both pretty powerful prayers. I've mentioned the Psalms. I see them related to the Psalms in a lot of ways. Great. So, and I don't even know if he actually sings the word gun in that song ever, but just in the title, which is kind of cool. You know, so let's break. Let's come back. So that probably makes sense. Yeah, let's do the same thing. Let's do like 12 minutes. So 29 after. Then there's such honesty here. You know, no one's asking, should I pray or should I not? How should I pray or what should I say? They're just doing it. You know. And that leads perfectly into the last set. And this is, of course, prayers of asking for forgiveness. Now, this is going to lead very nicely into next week's session, which are songs about faith and doubt. Because frankly, there are extraordinary songs about asking. I mean, we're going to find a situation where someone saying, I don't believe in you, God, but please help me believe in you. Right?
Amen. Del, I was thinking, maybe some of those pop singers are even a step ahead of us, of some Christians, because they talk to God if he is like their closest friend, you know, like just really just telling everything they feel, how difficult it is, doesn't matter, just telling it to them as a trustworthy friend.
I think you're right, you know, in the sense that these are prayers to Jesus, and that's different than praying to the Almighty God who's above the clouds, right? You know, it goes back to our first session, which was how do we think of who Jesus is and what are characters? Is he the guy that you could sit down and have a beer with? Sometimes, you know. So let's make sure to get to these songs, and we'll talk a little more at the end. This is really an extraordinary song. Jesus, forgive me for the things I'm about to say. Which is a really powerful song. And the second is by a singer-songwriter who was raised a Christian. He's not recording Christian music now, but his music usually deals with faith. And this is basically, you know, it's sort of another dark night of the soul. So let's listen to it, and then we'll jump back in. Now, I know you're saying, where's Jesus in here? He's not mentioned, but I think it's pretty clear. It's the holy words in red, right? And there's those Bibles where Jesus's words are in red, at least in America. And so for me, it's pretty clear that the you is Jesus because of that. So I'm sticking with that for what it's worth, which is probably nothing. This is a song that for me is about asking for forgiveness for not having faith, which is again an ironic thing to ask for. You know, but so let's jump in. Let's why don't we break into groups until 52 after the hour. Nice to see all of you. Actually, these have been some really great conversations. So we have a few minutes left, and sort of the floor is open to any comments. I wonder if anybody felt like any of these songs were particularly powerful for you personally, if you've had any kind of insight that you might take away from this session and you'd like to share. That's kind of a nice way to wrap up if anybody feels spoken to in that way.
I can't say that I could say that, but what I could say is that I'm acutely aware that if you strip away the language, all of them sound like the Psalms. That intensity of feeling and that intensity of relating to a God that you can't make sense of, but you will not let go of, I see in the Psalms.
I second that. I think that was a really good point you made in one of our earlier groups, Jane. And actually using, was it the first or the second group? I can't remember. The second group, we came up with the idea that maybe we could parallel those with Psalms, parallel each of the songs with Psalms.
all the songs, and the way I am also, and when I mess up, which is frequently, is the focus is on myself, and you're like talking to God, like God's up here, but I'm doing a lot. I'm doing a lot of like down here, and then I'm back looking at myself. So think of St. Paul, where he says, "The very thing I would not do, that I do, but that isn't me, but sin in me." So the more we're able to separate ourselves from our sin, say that sin stinks, it's awful. And I, on the other hand, I'm redeemed. So that we're as far as the east is from the west. That's how far God wants to separate our sin. So you see that in all those songs. They're looking for, we're all looking for that, but we slip up because our focus gets on ourselves, and everybody else is very busy thinking about themselves. So they're not too much thinking about what we're thinking. They're thinking about what they're thinking. We're all the same, and we all need help.
And I think that's, again, one of the reasons why I started to explore these songs is because they're all about Jesus specifically. Someone mentioned this earlier, how it seems like we're really close to Jesus here. Like there's a way of when you're speaking directly to Jesus, right? Not just this lofty God, ground of all being kind of thing, but actually if Jesus were there. And again, there's a lot of people, whether or not in the song themselves, people admit to having faith or not having faith. Inside the world of the song, these songs still were created, right? They were still recorded and shared, And for me, again, what strikes me so much is that there's such an honesty here, right? I don't know what I believe. I don't come across necessarily well. I'm not how orthodox I am, but I am still recording this and writing this and sharing this.
Yeah.
It's like an evangelist not evangelizing, like standing on the corner and saying, "I don't know what to believe. Come follow me,"
But still stirring up the people to think about it. Yeah. Also. Yeah.
Also, just by the fact that they're written and then sung and published and whatever recorded, it's actually saying there's a value in looking at these things. That even when you haven't got the neat, tidy answers, and especially when you haven't got the neat, tidy answers, there's a real value. And how many human beings, if I think about my street, would identify with some of those songs? And that is their value.
For sure. I think they're great kickstarters. I talked to a woman who did training for evangelizing, but she said, I was afraid to begin a conversation. But I think if you begin with a song like this, or somebody likes the song, then you already have the Kickstarter, because after that you can just talk about the song.
I think too that songs often enable us to empathize with people in situations that we might not have experienced ourselves. Often the emotions that are expressed within songs are at the more extreme end of things, either in terms of joy or depression. And that may not have been our experience, but listening to the song gives us a degree of understanding of how it feels to be in that place.
Yes, no one sort of records a song that's kind of like medium tempo, boring. Like, if you're going to take the time, you sort of got to go for it. It's especially if you want to sell records. The other thing I want to raise, and I hate to be cynical here, which is like, because I know we have clergy present, and there's nothing against you clergy folks. No, but like if someone talks to you, say, I want to tell you about, why you should have faith. By the way, I'm a pastor. They have a vested interest. It's their job, and it's their calling. But if someone who's not a Christian says, I'm wrestling with this, someone who's not a Christian might give that a second listen. I'm not saying that pastors are less honest, but there's just, I'm trying to tread carefully here, but you know what I'm saying? It's just, there's this, I'm sure it's offended everybody here, but it's just sort of like, it seems initially more honest because you're not professional, church person, maybe that's good, maybe that's not good, but there's a space for this. I think like Bill Brown was saying, there's just interesting, You know, so another traveler on this journey that we're all on, you know, ride with me for 3 or 4 minutes while I talk, and then I'll leave you alone. That's a different thing to do than when the pastor opens up the door of his car and says, hop on in, you know, we're going to church. Anyway.
And what would be interesting, Delvin, I have contact with a pop artist in the Netherlands. He's from Ireland, and he came to the Netherlands, and he also made a song called Jesus Child. It's from a Moog. They were quite famous in the Netherlands because they were on a talk show with 100 million, a million people watching. For the Netherlands, it's a big show, and they came there by every time. I could try, if he's interested, to join us, because then maybe we can also hear it from his perspective.
Very interesting. Yeah. Why don't you send me an email? You have my email, right? We could talk about that, right?
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, thank you everybody. Jonathan, I didn't know if you needed to close us or anything officially, but coming up back next week.
Yeah, absolutely. Much thanks to Delvin, as ever. It's been a fascinating and rich discussion that he's opened up. Some really interesting and again provocative pieces of music to listen to. But from the groups that I've been in, I know the conversation was really helpful. So much thanks to Delvin for all the work that he's put into putting these sessions together. The last one in the series is next week, so do come back and share some more. Ben's put information in the chat about other events that are coming up. There's a really interesting interfaith dialogue on Sunday at 7. Between our vicar Sam Wells and a local rabbi, Rabbi Daniel Epstein, about Christian and Jewish interrelationships. So that's the second in a 3-part series. First one was fascinating, so thoroughly recommend that. But as ever, there's lots of other things that are really interesting in the program. So we hope to see you again next Friday, if not before. Thanks for being with us today. All the best.